Here I'm back again. This is the first of 3 in a series of videos that's about making paddles. The first video here is about tools. As you can see, my workbench is filled up with stuff here, and first of all I want to introduce the Spokeshave, which is the most important tool for me in paddle making. This guy, you may never have seen one of these before. This is a Spokeshave. Spokeshaves come in many variations. This is the most commonly known one, with 2 screws for adjustment and a flat sole, and you can get these pretty much everywhere. These are old ones, and if you want, you can buy these in my shop. I got 2 variations, the one with 2 screws and one with 1. And I think the one with 1 screw is actually really good. It's my favorite. I use this tool every day. I bought it more than 30 years ago and it's still working. I can still make it sharp and it still does the job for me. So as a general note, I would like to just say that I think you don't need to go and buy a lot of tools to get started making one paddle, or 2 or 3. You could borrow tools because a lot of people around you will have tools around, and you don't need to actually go and buy a lot of stuff to get started. That shouldn't stop you, at least. And again, we only have one planet, so borrowing stuff makes sense. You don't need to produce a brand new Spokeshave to just make a single paddle. So Spokeshave is number 1. It needs to be sharp, of course, super sharp. The sharper the better. And it needs to be adjusted so that it shaves off just tiny shavings all the time. I can show you that when we get to the actual paddle making. Spokeshave, you will need one of these. And then in order of appearance, we will have the pencil. Sharp one. A pencil is not just a pencil. This is a fairly soft pencil, so that you will make a nice and visible mark on a soft piece of wood. Harder pencils are no good, in my opinion. And it needs to be sharp. You will need a ruler. This is 1 meter long. But you don't need a fancy ruler like mine. Any piece of wood, as long as it is straight, will do. You can just eyeball it, look down the piece of wood and see if you can find a straight surface. This surface is fairly straight, and well, it will be good enough for this project. And you can use that as a ruler to make markings on your paddle. As important as the pencil is the marker. This is a round tip, a felt tip marker. It's a whiteboard marker, and that's important. If you take a permanent marker, the color will not come off so easily, whereas the whiteboard marker will be really easily removed with sandpaper. And you will need to be able to make one of these lines 3 millimeter thick, nice and visible and straight with the ruler. We'll get back to that. So what do we have? This is not absolutely necessary, but it's pretty handy. This is a hoof rasp. It's one of my favorite tools. It has a real rough and a very fine side. Makes it good for lots of different jobs, but actually any file or rasp will do the job here. You need to be able to fix your paddle blank to some sort of table, and for that you will need a couple of clamps like these. Like this, we can take the paddle blank, you can see. So I would say for a project, if you don't have a vise like this one, you will need a couple of clamps. They don't need to be big, but they need to keep the paddle in place. And of course, a solid work table. Of course, you also need a knife. This is my favorite, a Mora knife, but actually any knife will do, and it needs to be super sharp like this one, because it's just more fun to make things with a sharp tool. Finally, we have the sandpaper. I don't like sandpaper, but it needs to be sanded once you're done planing. And sandpaper is super important. It needs to be quality sandpaper. You can see this is 60 grit sandpaper. This is kind of the roughest sandpaper I use for my paddles. And you can triple fold it like this, and you get a real hard surface, and you don't need a sanding block to sand down and remove all the tool marks from your project. You will need more. The higher the number, the finer the sandpaper. This is 80 grit sandpaper. And finally, you can go over with 150, and you don't need a lot finer than that. But this is Mitka. It's the Finnish sandpaper I use. It's not paper actually, it's cloth, and it's super strong and it lasts forever, so you don't need a lot of this. Just a few pieces. See if you can get some from someone you know, because then you don't need to buy a roll of it. I guess this is pretty much all the tools that you'll need. So stay tuned. I will get back to making the paddle in a second.